So that's where you're starting to see another influence where they're going, hey, we've got to do this. If they don't, they run the risk then that occupiers will start to go, you know what, I may not renew my lease here. I'll start to look at other buildings that are demonstrating that.
Kia ora everyone, Chris here, Bayleys Insights team, sitting here with Stuart Bent. Now Stu, you've got a pretty exciting role at Bayleys, right? So you obviously lead our property management services, but you're also our lead for ESG, like our sort of working group. How are you? You're right?
Good. Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Nice to have you back.
Yeah, no, of course. And so, Stu, you've recently been overseas with our global partner, Knight Frank, through both Europe and Australia. And we thought it'd be a really opportune moment just to sort of sit down and have a chat around some of the trends that you're seeing for ESG, and I guess specifically the E in ESG, so the environmental side, what we're seeing with occupiers and sort of the property markets overseas. And I guess our main sort of focus will be office, but some of this will also obviously flow into industrial and potentially retail as well. But mate, what are you seeing? What did you see on your travels?
Well, I saw a great set of yachting in Barcelona, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, mate, I got the chance to visit our head office in London from Knight Frank's head office at Baker Street, which was pretty awesome. Big business, big market. And then more recently I was in Sydney as well. So it gave me a really good insight to what's going on overseas in the whole sustainability and ESG space. Quite amazing though, even just in a year from when I was up there 12 months ago, how much progress has been made in this whole space. Obviously these markets are a lot more regulated than in New Zealand, so they've got their certifications that are required, etc. in the UK, what they call the EPCs.
And are those mainly energy efficiency certifications, or are they sort of across water and other things?
No, mainly energy, and the same, a little bit like the neighbours. Obviously within Australia, over a certain threshold, isn't size-wise, every building over there has to disclose their energy efficiency rating. So that's a big influence of what's happening in those markets where you've got 100%. Now occupiers who are really, what I noticed a lot was the occupiers driving a lot of the direction of the landlord strategies. So give you an example, our ESG team in Knight Frank, one of their key strategies is they will look at a building and see how many of the tenants are actually promoting publicly their commitments to sustainability, so net zero, carbon neutral, etc. And so landlords who suddenly see that they've got 2/3 of their income associated with
tied to that issue,
they can't ignore it. So that's where you're starting to see another influence where they're going, hey, we've got to do this. If they don't, they run the risk then that occupiers will start to go, you know what, I may not renew my lease here. I'll start to look at other buildings that are demonstrating that. Because those workplaces are pretty key representation of those companies' commitment to their sustainability goals.
I guess as well for professional services, there's probably, I don't know, 3 main areas where you've got big carbon usage. One would be obviously your premises, and then probably your vehicles and your flights. But so the premises is obviously a really big one in the area.
Oh, massive. And when people are measuring their carbon footprints, obviously their head office is a big part of that footprint, the electricity in there. But yeah, I mean, that's something we've recently been working on our own carbon footprint assessment. We want to kind of walk the talk as well. So that's been really exciting milestone for us.
Quite eye-opening as well, to work out where things are kind of like where things are being used and that.
Yeah, totally. But again, that's the way the world's going, and certainly as I saw overseas, I mean, it's massively pronounced. What was really interesting is talking to a lot of our agents, it's just a currency over there now. It is the norm. Agents are very familiar with all of the jargon. They're familiar with the implications on value. And I think that's what I noticed a big difference is that our market here, we're still a little bit immature in that space, but it is coming. It's coming real quick.
Yeah, and we've chatted around the office about how it's got parallels to what we saw with seismic off the back of Christchurch and Kaikoura earthquakes here, right, where it suddenly became much more pronounced, and everyone became aware of the issue quite quickly once it sort of hit a certain point. Yeah,
look, the seismic side of things was very acute. Mother Nature just lifted the country, dropped it, and buildings collapsed, sadly. So people had to react real quick, and so you notice everyone now talks the language of IEPs and DPs. Everyone knows that, seismic ratings and all that. So this isn't as acute, but I describe it's like a train that's left the station. It is building more and more momentum. There are so many influencers now, the banks have got a big appetite for people to support their commitments through data. So hence why you're seeing a lot more the number of certificates or certifications, ratings, whether
like
it be
Neighbours and
Neighbours, Green Star, but at the high level, you've got now big companies in New Zealand that have started to commit to the kind of Ferrari of benchmark. It's called GRESB. So you're starting to see that come into New Zealand as well, which is really, really exciting.
That's really interesting.
But all those roads are leading to now this commitment to sustainability, and we're now starting to see some evidence that we never saw before, where there's slight premiums that are now being achieved in Auckland and Wellington for buildings that are demonstrating those sustainability environmental credentials. So we're starting to see a slight premium for rents and for sales. So it's the first bit of evidence we're starting to see. Overseas, it's very, very pronounced. There's distinct evidence that you will get a higher rate per square metre, a higher yield on buildings that can demonstrate those credentials.
And I guess Wellington makes particular sense, right? Because one of the big movers in terms of mandates has been the New Zealand government and their requirement for neighbours ratings over a certain threshold for leases, right? So, it makes heaps of sense that you see it through Wellington and then, of course, Auckland because of the corporate occupiers.
Absolutely. We have, whilst it's a lot more evident within Wellington, but we certainly have a lot of government occupiers up here. And yeah, absolutely. If they're following the rules, they shouldn't be renewing or taking on any new leases to buildings that can't demonstrate that, particularly neighbours rating on the energy efficiency. So, any landlords out there have got to be a little bit careful that if they do have any exposure from a government tenant, they've got to make sure that they have those credentials in there to avoid that impact on value through occupancy.
100%, or becoming the easy target for competing landlords to basically swoop in and steal your tenant.
Oh, yeah, totally. But that's, it's been really good, even though we see a lot overseas. New Zealand's we're still doing well. In the last 12 months, even our own managed portfolio here at Bayleys, the number of neighbours ratings that we have now in there is jumped, which is really cool. And that's part of our role, is to help educate some of the landlords out there that have been kind of, in the past, it's been easy to escape this kind of trend because, hey, if it doesn't get me a return on that capital investment, when I say capital investment, it could be putting in some smart metering or allowing the people to get some data around any of the utilities, water, waste or power. So people are now starting to realise that they can actually get a return on that.
Which is exciting, cool. Right? Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, because there's a phrase out there that has been used around these stranded assets. A little bit daunting, but it's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't evolve, it's like when we own our domestic homes. I mean, sometimes we have to upgrade our kitchens because that's what people want to see when they buy a new home. We have to do that with our buildings as well. We have to kind of keep them current. Because also as well, when I talk to the Knight Frank team, the amount of buyers now, they're doing their due diligence on when they're buying assets. That's a lot more. Climate risk is a big topic now as well.
So interesting, because if you went back 10 years ago, not really, not on the agenda.
Not at all. And probably the other thing as well is that the top 200 companies in New Zealand now are mandated by law to report on their climate risk, particularly around the opportunities and risk associated with climate risk. So that's certainly been in its first year, and there are a lot of companies now that are really having a more forensic look because, again, it's a regulation, and that's where the overseas markets have really progressed a lot further because of the regulation. And reality is, until we get that regulation coming into New Zealand, we'll still probably be a little bit behind the other international markets.
Yeah, look, that makes heaps of sense. Well, Stuart, we might wrap up here, but thanks very much for reporting back on your travels.
Pleasure, mate. Pleasure.
And,
anytime.
If you want to learn a little bit more, feel welcome to reach out to Stu and the team. They'd be super happy to have a chat about it. So, cheers, Stu.
No worries, mate. Thanks.